Hi, welcome to Fulton at Work. I'm Tony Phillips. On today's show, we take a look at some of the new changes in the county's animal control services. We'll also get an update on a few very interesting cases involving animal rescues, from horses to cats. And finally, we'll answer some of your questions about those coyotes and wolves spotted in areas of South Fulton. Stay with us. Fulton at Work will be right back. Welcome back to Fulton at Work. We're talking today about the changes with the county's animal control services. Oliver Delk is serving as the administrator for animal services. Oliver, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for spending some time with us. Now, you and I are kind of in an interesting position. About 5 years ago, you transitioned the animal control contract administration to me, and now 5 years later, we've kind of transitioned it back to you. So tell us a little bit about what the contract administration involves.
Yes. Part of my responsibility, of course, is to make sure that all of the activities that are outlined within the contract are carried out by the vendor.
Right.
And those activities run the gamut from dealing with rabies to adoptions of the animals, also picking up the animals, bringing them into the shelter, and so on. Things of those nature is some of the things that we get involved in.
Now, it's interesting, Oliver, because one of the things that some people may not be aware of is that animal services in Fulton County is provided via a contract. So tell us how that works. How does that work in terms of providing the service, and there's a contractor involved? How does all that work together?
Yes, this is one of the very unique things about the way that we do it. We actually, as you said, contract the services out to a vendor. The vendor in this instance is named Lifeline, and they are responsible for carrying out all of the activities, whereas the county, on the other end, actually provides them with the resources to do those services, such as the facility and so on.
So under that arrangement, the employees that actually are employed at the animal shelter and who drive the animal control vehicles are actually employers of the contractor. Is that the case?
That's the case. They are employees of the contractor and not the county, although when you see them, the uniforms that they wear says Fulton County Animal Services. And that's so that they will have identification that the residents will recognize
Certainly.
when they're out in the field, doing their work.
Now, you mentioned Lifeline Animal Project, I believe is the name, and I understand that they're fairly recent to the county. So tell us a little bit about that transition. Who was a contractor previously, and now it's Lifeline?
Yes, the previous contractor was called Barking Hound, and we just transferred the services from Barking Hound to Lifeline. The transfer went extremely smooth. The new vendor is in now, and they've already started going out and servicing the community. They've been getting tons of calls, and so hopefully the residents haven't noticed any interruption whatsoever in the service delivery.
Well, I know that during that transition, one of the goals is to make sure that there is no service disruption, and it sounds like the transition went smoothly enough where hopefully it was unnoticeable to most residents.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that they may find, of course, we had to take down the website only because we are transferring it over to the new one.
Certainly.
And but other than that, I don't think that they will notice any differences in the service delivery, that was there before.
Certainly. And as with all county contracts, this contract was awarded through a competitive bid process.
That's correct.
And what's the approximate value of the contract?
This value of this contract is approximately $2.4 million. Okay. Which is a little higher than what it was before. But again, what we're looking at in terms of the services that are going to be delivered, I think it's very, very economical for the work that's going to be done.
And it's also, to that point, one of the services that still remains as a countywide service, meaning my understanding is that this service is provided for all of the cities, 14 cities in Fulton County, as well as the unincorporated parts of the county.
That is correct. And all of the cities, with the largest being Atlanta, of course, that we provide the services for. And so any resident from any of these cities within Fulton County can call to Animal Services, if they need for us to come out, and we will do that.
Well, with a new vendor, I would assume there would be some changes implemented, or at least some goals for new things that may come about with a new vendor. Has there been any discussion about what some of those changes may be?
Yes, one of the things that we are looking at is see how we can increase our adoption rate. As you can imagine, having done this before yourself, you know that we pick up a large number of animals throughout the county. And our first goal has to be, and I believe this, that we want to try to get these animals adopted if at all possible. Put them in a loving home, and we think that that's better for them than to be, you know, at the shelter.
Certainly, and that's really important information for citizens to be aware of, because I'm not sure that all of us understand that you can adopt a good family pet friend at the animal shelter, and it's at a very reasonable cost as compared with some of the more retail options that may be out there. In addition to the adoption program, which I know is really important and helps to maintain the shelter, I understand there's some effort to maybe look at some of the facilities and see if there are options there to maybe improve the facilities or things along that line. Is there a process underway to address that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have discussed this with the new vendor, as well as we have presented to the Board of Commissioners a plan that they have approved to make sure that those things that need to be renovated within the facility will be taken care of. One of the things that we're also looking at is seeing how we can expand, you know, the footprint of the facility, if you will, so that it will allow us to be able to take in more animals, particularly when we have a situation where we have to pick up animals that may not be of the normal course.
Sure. I think one of the things that is really interesting to know is the volume of animals that are actually at the shelter. My understanding is the daily capacity currently is hovering just below 300 animals. Is that about right?
Yes, that's about right. And also, as you know, that one of the problems that we have, again, as I said, when we get the animals in, again, our goal is to evaluate the animals, to have an assessment that says, you know, what the animal needs in order for them to be able to be adopted, and then for us to actually chip the animals so that we would be able to then to keep up with us in case the animals for some reason gets lost or whatever. Then we'll have a way to be able to find out who the owner is and get them back, you know, to the owner. So that's another thing that we, you know, really look forward to as we move forward with this new vendor.
You know, technology is really something else these days, and you mentioned the microchip process, and I know that that's something that technology has provided. It's a lot different. In the old days, we used to have what people refer to as dog tags that you would put on your animal, but now they actually can insert, I understand, a microchip under the skin of the animal with no harm to your pet whatsoever, but allows them to be able to track that animal so that if it's lost, they have the ability to scan it and be able to identify the owner. Is that the case?
Yes, that's the case. And also, it also gives us some basic information that the animal has been vaccinated, and you know, so that's important information to know, particularly make sure that the animal doesn't have rabies and et cetera. And so we know then, you know, how to keep up with what's been going on in that animal's life.
Certainly, and that's good information to have, and it kind of connects to the staff at the shelter. I know that a lot of our citizens likely see the animal control vehicles in their communities from time to time, but there's a full staff at the animal shelter, including veterinary services. What are some of the other staff positions there?
Yeah, we also have an adoption center that we have there for people that can come in, and they go through a process where if they actually they can go online and they can look and see what animals are available. If they decide that there's an animal that they want, then they let us know at the shelter, and what we will do then is to make sure that that animal is up to date on all of their shots and et cetera. And then when the individual comes in, what they do is they try to get the animal to be familiar with the persons that are going to be adopting the animal. And if they also have other animals, what we try to do is to introduce them to make sure that there will be compatibility between the animals as well as the people that are adopting the animals.
You know, that's one of the interesting things I learned is you actually have to socialize the pet that you have with the pet that you're looking to
Exactly.
adopt. And I'm assuming that's what that process is. It gives them a
Exactly.
chance. And I don't like people to get to know each other a little
Exactly.
bit as they're getting ready to adopt a new family pet and bring it into the shelter. And I understand, in addition to the veterinarian adoption, that there's kennel staff there and other staff that work there, and it's pretty much a 24/7 operation.
Yes, the operation does run 24/7, as you just said, and one of the reasons, of course, is because, as you understand, that it's the service has to be, year-round, even during the holidays. Individuals can, call, for services during those times as well. We also have, officers that go out patrolling the areas, and they work very closely with the emergency personnel, both fire and police as well, because in numerous types of situations. And so that's, of course, we have administrative intake staff that, dispatchers and so on.
So there's a lot that goes on at the shelter.
Oh, yes.
When we come back, we'll discuss what, if anything, can be done about the roaming coyotes and wolves in South Fulton. Stay with us. Welcome back to Fulton at Work. With us today is Oliver Delk, who is the contract administrator for Animal Services. Oliver, I had just a few more questions I wanted to get in before I let you go today. One is anti-tethering. I know that's an ordinance that was passed several years ago. Can you tell us basically how that works?
Yes, what we're saying to the residents that we don't want to see animals that are tied, like a permanent fixture, if you will, a rope or a chain, etc., to a fixture, that there should be some type of enclosure so that the animal can move around freely. And if the animal cannot be contained in that manner, that they should contact us, and we will try to work with them on some methods and ways in which we can, ensure that they don't violate that particular ordinance.
Because it sounds like that ordinance may involve both education as well as enforcement, because in years past it was probably fairly commonplace for people to chain animals to a tree or to a fence post, and now that's no longer legal in Fulton County.
That's correct.
One other area we wanted to discuss was circuses. There's been a lot of attention paid to circuses that typically visit the city of Atlanta on an annual basis. Tell us a little bit about what Fulton County Animal Services' role has been with the annual circuses that come to the city of Atlanta.
Well, yes. One of the things that we've done this year is we're working very closely with the city of Atlanta, which has a cruelty to elephants ordinance, and this particular ordinance indicates that no elephant should be mistreated in any shape, form, or fashion, and that's depriving them of food or sleep or water, etc. And what we've done is Animal Services has provided around-the-clock monitoring of these elephants while the circus is in town, to make sure that there is no cruelty to those elephants. And so I can say that the two circuses that were here, that we found no violations whatsoever. Folks that were working with the circus were very happy to have us there, and I think things went extremely well.
Well, it's interesting to know, because I'm not sure everyone is aware that Animal Services was actually monitoring circuses in the city of Atlanta around the clock, 24 hours a day, and that certainly provides a tremendous degree of oversight to ensure that all the animals there are being protected and that there are no violations of the ordinance. And to your point, you say there were no violations found in the current run of the circus that recently ended.
Right. And although we were really focused on elephants, as you just indicated, we did also look at the tigers and the lions that they had, the horses and so on. So, and we found that there were no violations whatsoever, that the animals seemed to be extremely happy and well taken care of.
Oliver, thank you for taking some time to speak with us today about this important county service, and we wish you all the best with Fulton County Animal Services. When we come back, we'll discuss what, if anything, can be done about roaming coyotes and wolves in South Fulton. Stay with us. We're back and we're discussing the county's animal control services today. FGT viewers have called in to report that they have either seen or heard coyotes and wolves in their community, and they want to know what, if anything, can be done. Sergeant Paul Ebbs has the answer. Paul, thank you for sitting in with us today.
No problem.
Well, so let's talk about coyotes and wolves. I know we've gotten a lot of calls from citizens. They seem to be more commonplace. What are we seeing, and should we be concerned?
I don't think we should be specifically concerned. These animals are indigenous to the area. They're like raccoons and possums, only bigger. Okay. People are seeing them now because their population is just really, really increased. They are a larger animal than we're used to. The eastern coyote a decade or even 2 decades ago was a little bigger than a red fox. It's a different animal. What we're seeing now is a hybrid, and that's where the term wolf comes from. Mm-hmm. When people think, oh, we've got wolves out here, we don't have the wolf man, we don't have the timber wolves from out west.
Running, right?
We have exactly. These animals are basically skittish. They want to avoid contact with people. Mm-hmm. But I can't say that there's no danger from them. They're a wild animal, and they're neighborhood of 50 pounds. They would be bigger if they had more food. I mean, they're what they call, and I don't know if it's an urban tag, like urban legend. Mm-hmm. The country folks call them the red wolf. Okay. And this is a eastern wolf type animal that seems to have interbred with coyotes. Coyotes will interbreed with dogs. They're all canines, so they morph in different areas. They adjust. They're adjusting to an urban lifestyle. They are in the city. Wherever you have a creek, you likely have coyotes in family units of 6, 7, 8. Mm-hmm. They hunt small animals, and we are starting to have problems with them taking household cats that are outside and small dogs. There's certain areas in the county where that's real irritating.
So being wild animals and having some predatory instinct, my understanding is, to your point, that if you have small animals, cats, animals smaller in size, they could be in danger if there are coyotes in your community. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. What precautions can you take?
Well, I wouldn't leave personally, I wouldn't leave a dog outside overnight. I mean, they could be attacked. Now, likely a large dog, they're not going to, just like men of our size, they're likely not going to attack. I say likely because you never know. They hunt both in packs and singularly. As the process of absorption has taken over, their characteristics have changed. They have wolf-like qualities. Mm-hmm. And to say that these animals are a wolf is not incorrect, but it's not correct either. The wolf, you can kind of, one of the things I tell people, if you want to know if coyotes are around, and you don't get to hear it that often, they make this really spooky howl. They howl. The old timber wolf, we all heard him on TV,
Sure.
The woof, woof, woof.
Right.
Well, that's not like that. It's kind of a high pitch. It's people are like, what the heck is that?
Something hard to identify.
But if those sirens go off, like the tornado sirens, right behind those sirens, you'll hear them howling, and you'll be like, whoa. So you can tell how many are in your neighborhood.
Sound.
It's a distinct sound.
Well, one of the points you made a little earlier is that they've become increasingly indigenous, meaning that those animals are more common in our area than they ever have been in the past. Not unlike the area where I live, we see deer all the time.
Right.
And so is that because of the population explosion? It's just not unusual to see them now?
Yeah, they don't have a natural enemy, really. other than getting hit by cars, and you know, so they bred. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of them out there. I mean, we're becoming saturated with them, and they're not. The food chain's established. You know, you got your little critters that hawks eat and that kind of thing. Now you put a bigger animal into that mix, and we haven't changed anything else. Something kind of has to give. That's why they're eating the house cats and dogs. Now, I have seen them attack a golden retriever. So, and that's a big animal. It's not commonplace. There has been no reports of attacks on human beings in the Southeast that I'm aware of. There is a report of an elderly couple that were killed by these animals in New York. Now, whether or not they're the same, because they're morphing, you go up to Toccoa, and this particular wolf, hybrid coyote, is gray. It's the same animal, but it's gray. They'll interbreed with dogs, so you might, you know, it's just they adapt.
I've heard that they're very adaptable, and that's why when they come into metropolitan or urban areas, they tend to survive quite well because they're highly adaptable. But it sounds to me as if we're seeing more of them, not because they're new to the area, but because there are more of them now than there were in years past. Listen, a couple of other interesting cases that I wanted to ask you about. I understand there was a case recently where we had to rescue a large number of cats. Can you kind of tell me what happened with that one?
Well, we got a call on a home complaint in Alpharetta where there were nearly 100 cats.
100 cats?
Yeah, just shy of that.
And this is in a single family home?
That's correct.
My goodness, that's a lot of cats in one home.
It was, and we have cleared that home.
And the cats had been unintended for quite some time because the home wasn't currently occupied, was it?
Well, there was a woman that was connected with the home, but nobody was living there.
Right.
And we actually had to go in with the hazmat gear. It was kind of a sad situation.
Goodness. And I understand you had some cooperation from animal rescue groups in that rescue?
We did, because with 100 cats hitting the shelter, I mean, there were several of these animals that it's not your typical case, in that a lot of times when I've been involved in these before, there are litters everywhere. Most of these animals were already altered. There were no kittens in there. And some of the animals were tame, so that they could move immediately into rescues. And others, as they calmed down, you know, they may have been frightened initially, but so they moved a lot of these. The rescue stepped up and took a lot of these animals out. So the outcome on this was largely good.
Well, it's good to know that in a circumstance where you had that many cats in one place, that Fulton County Animal Services was able to step in and provide, working with rescue groups, rescue for these animals to make sure that they got to a safe place. Paul, I want to thank you for sitting in with us today. That's some good information. I'm sure people are interested to hear about that coyote information. Thank you for all you do. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up our time, but not our conversation. Email us with your conversation. Back up. Tongue got in the way. One more time. Paul, thank you again for taking some time to be with us today. We wish you all the best with Fulton County Animal Services and appreciate the work that you do.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up our time, but not our conversation. Email us with your questions or comments about today's show. The email address is fgtv.feedback@fultoncountyga.gov. And if you need to contact Animal Control, please call them at 404-613-0358. Thank you so much for joining us today on Fulton at Work. I'm Tony Phillips, and we'll see you next time.